I've always wondered, 5 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms.
I swear that these celebrity houses that we do here, they tend to need 3 to 5 additional bathrooms than bedroom count. McKay, I don't have enough money to know why.
Okay.
So that's if I ever get there, I'll call you and tell you. But entertaining parties, I don't know.
That must be it.
We're gonna have to get somebody with a lot more dough to let us know on that. Good morning. This is Lance Kenmore with the Kenmore team, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's edition of the Tri-Cities Real Estate Update. As always, you can contact me, Lance Kenmore, anytime direct on my cell phone at 509-727-8977, or visit us on the web at kenmoreteam.com. Once again, I always like to thank John for hosting and everybody here at the station for working to make this happen. Mr. John McKay, how you doing over there?
Well, let's see. We've had the Jekyll and Hyde wardrobe the last week or so. Hey, 75, we're going to wear shorts.
Yes,
hey, today
yes.
it's 60, 60 and raining, and we're going to bundle up,
Well, I was gone last week, and we flew back in late on Saturday, and there was some wind there.
Yes.
The things you don't like to hear when you get off the plane, and the pilot was like, talking with the flight attendant, he's like, man, I really had to work for that one, And so, it was that wind last weekend was a little bit nutty there for sure.
Yeah, when you're coming in and you feel boom, left wheel, boom, right wheel, and then boom, and then the nose wheel.
I was very thankful as he was very skilled. I didn't know he had to work for it that hard until I saw him when I was getting off the plane. So it was good for sure, but you are right. Hopefully now we've turned over the clock. It's May. We'll get some of that good weather coming in for sure. Well, we always like to start it off with our crazy national celebrity housing story. And so this one, coming in from Silicon Valley, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt is selling his Silicon Valley house for $24 million, which sounds like normal pricing for Silicon Valley, but he bought it in 1990 when he was there, and it was only just over $2 million. So, I mean, it's almost 12 times as much now as it was back then. What does that get you? That gets you 5 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms, 5,200 square feet on approximately, and I think where a lot of the worth comes from this, on approximately 3 acres.
Okay.
So
lots of land.
Yeah, but get this though. He has been known to have a huge portfolio. Now, granted, I think he can because I think his net worth is somewhere around $24 billion with a B.
Okay.
But he has a $65 million parcel of undeveloped land up in the hills above Beverly Hills, which he bought from Paul Allen's family. So that was $65 million. That's undeveloped land. He also has a $15 million mansion in the Georgetown area of Washington, D.C., where they said Jackie Kennedy once resided. And then he has $114 million worth of island homes in Miami. So why is he selling this property? Didn't say exactly, but I think he has plenty of residences to choose from. So,
yes.
So that's our crazy celebrity real estate story.
I've always wondered, 5 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms.
I swear that these celebrity houses that we do here, they tend to need 3 to 5 additional bathrooms than bedroom count. McKay, I don't have enough money to know why.
Okay.
So that's if I ever get there, I'll call you and tell you. But entertaining parties, I don't know.
That must be
it. We're going to have to get somebody with a lot more dough to let us know on that. Well, McKay, I do like to temper that with stories that have a little more meaning to our local real estate market and what's going on in the market.
Yes.
Headlines this week that came out, the Fed met, and I think a lot of people were, if we were replaying the shows from March, a lot of people were expecting interest rates to be cut by this time frame. The Fed came out and they did not cut rates. They held rates where they were at. And that's mainly due to the inflation numbers. You know, they're very, very committed to getting inflation back to around 2%. Given the current data, the Fed said, in their statement, the Fed said, given the current data, the board expects achieving this goal to take longer than previously thought. So inflation came in still hotter than they expected, so that took rate cuts off of the table. Also, the labor statistics, the same way. Labor statistics that came out last week were very, very strong numbers. So from the Fed's perspective, it might not look that way in sectors with construction and real estate. But from the Fed's perspective, the economy is still cranking along with too hot of numbers in those sectors. So, folks, I got to tell you, like, if you were on the sidelines waiting to buy in 24, expecting that we were going to see rate cuts in the second half of the year, more and more data starts to come out showing that the likelihood of that is going down at a rapid pace. And so we'll keep up on the economic numbers, but for now, those rates in the last, I watch them daily, but those rates in the last 2 weeks have been bouncing around on a 30-year fixed from 6.875 to 7.1, just to give people an idea of roughly where we're seeing. And I don't see that change breaking much out of that in the next couple of weeks. So that's our update there on rates for that. Next update I had coming out of a number of big real estate institutions is we talked a lot about when you go to see a house that you would have to sign an agreement to see that house, because now Washington State had changed agency law, and now they were requiring brokerage service agreements between clients and real estate brokers to provide those services. Showing houses was defined as one of those services.
So every time you go look at a house, you have to sign?
Correct, or you have to have a document that covers you for more than that singular showing.
Okay.
And so what's happened is the rest of the country is not there yet. So part of that is coming out of the National Association of Realtors settlement. Washington was very, very progressive in this, and so they put that into play January 1st here. So we see it a little bit, but now we have companies like Zillow coming out, EXP Real Estate coming out with what they're calling one-page documents that are like a tour document is what they're calling. It's almost like an abbreviated agency agreement to show a singular house, or a shorter agreement to show 7 houses. I caution people about signing those over a portal or over a third-party company that is not your agent. This is very, very new and changing rapidly, but if you have, say, a third-party technology company like a Zillow or a Homes.com or somebody like that set up a showing for you, and it's not an agent locally here in the market that you recognize or know, and then they want you to sign an agreement that they're going to send you before you set up that appointment with the agent, I would really caution you to wait and have a conversation with your local agent at the house or at their office before you go to see that house.
Yes.
Because what you could be doing is unknowingly locking yourself, and we've already had this come up, and we've had clients call our office. You could unknowingly be locking yourself into an agency relationship with that agency or with a certain agent. And I've had a number of people already tell me, well, they just told me I had to sign it to see the house, and so I did. Well, the days of doing that, I think, are long gone. Like, you have to be a little bit more discerning with who you're calling, what you're picking, and what you're doing to go see the house. So I would just say with a number of these technology companies coming out with different agreements like that, wait and have a discussion with your local agent that you plan on working with or that you might work with before you just blanket sign that and then not know what you might have locked yourself into. So a lot of those changes coming out from the national level, and we're keeping a close eye on those and monitoring those. This week, what I really wanted to talk about, this is a super fun show for me. So, as you know, John, thank you so much. You ran an encore show last week because I was out of town. And so I was actually back in New York, and I was at a real estate conference, at a work conference.
Okay.
And I get super excited about this because of the advertising and the marketing that we do and some people that I've known in the industry for 15 plus years. Is Karen and I get invited each year to a super exclusive meeting that is primarily the top 200 team leaders in the U.S. Ooh. So basically the top real estate team from each metro market, along with some advertisers and other agents that are doing a lot of stuff in the real estate sector. And so we meet for 4 days, and we talk about what's going on in real estate, what changes are coming down the pipeline, what we need to be aware of. And for me, the basics of it is a lot of people sometimes will say like, well, why do you go and do that, Lance? What does that look like for you? And how does that help? Well, the biggest thing is that I get a lot of information, a lot of trends that are coming down for marketing, advertising, lending, and then we're able to use that to help our local customers here in the Columbia Basin buy and sell real estate, help you get into a house that you might not have been able to get into, help you sell a house for more money than otherwise we might not have been able to if we're not staying on top of these trends. And so it was super fun. And so I took a bunch of notes, I always do, and I kind of wrote out an outline of like what were some of the huge takeaways that I had from that conference that can help people here in our local real estate market. So night one, for those real estate geeks out there, night one we went and had dinner with an agent named Ryan Serhart. And Ryan Serhart was made famous on a show called $1 Million Listing New York. And so he was on that show, I think he said, for nearly 8 years.
Wow.
And so he kind of grew up on that show in his real estate business. Now he controls over 650 team members. He consistently sells over $1 billion in real estate with those team members up and down, mainly the East Coast, but they have an LA branch as well now and a few other teams on the West, but mainly East Coast teams. And a lot in the luxury real estate market of New York. So when sometimes McKay will have those celebrity real estate stories, sometimes those are his listings that we're talking about.
Ooh.
The night we went to dinner last week, he had just negotiated himself and gone and shown a $35 million townhouse.
Wow.
And then it was surreal because we go to dinner and he's asking me a question about Zillow advertising and what I thought about Zillow marketing and stuff. I don't even want to speak because I was like, who am I to tell this guy anything about what's going on? But the cool part about him is, regardless of what you've seen on TV, very down to earth, normal guy, same business model. I just think his has a lot more zeros in it than mine does. I haven't sold a $35 million townhouse, but very, very similar stuff that crosses over even those price ranges. And the number one thing for him, if you've ever seen, that he talked about is he just talked about the importance of branding.
Yes.
So picking an agent that has a brand presence in the market, has market share out in the market, a voice in the market, that can help you reach a lot of people. For him, that is probably his number one mantra that he's going after in his business and in his show. And then he talked about the need to continue to learn and innovate. Like, the market's changing, the rules are changing, the laws are changing. And if we're stagnant in that, then you're going to get left behind, or there's going to be a new way of doing business that you don't know. And so he really was constantly looking at what was going on. And what I love about that is, we picked up some tidbits there, and he's working with some lenders on a national level that they are already starting to make changes. We talked about what this looks like if buyers are having to pay their own buyer agent commission. And in the past, they really feel like that's been wrapped up in the sales price of the house. Well, a lot of the lenders, they already came out. We talked a little bit about this, and lenders have said that if a buyer pays that, or if a seller pays a buyer agent, that's not counted against their concessions. So if the rules say that you can only get 4% paid to you from a seller to credit, and then you also have that the seller pays a buyer agent, people were worried that that was going to take away from the 4%. It's not. The major companies, the major lenders have come out and said that's not part of it. Well, fast forward, even more aggressive than that, in certain markets and loan programs, they're working on a product right now that would allow the buyer to finance those commissions into the price of the home. And so that's going to be a big deal because for all intents and purposes, that's how the market's been has been going about and operating. Now it's just going to be more defined that truly is your buyer cost. So he's working on some great loan programs that's going to do. And then the last thing that he said to us that I thought was really, really important from not just a real estate perspective, but any business that you're out there working on as part of your brand, sometimes the biggest thing that comes up is what you do and what else you are. And so I think, McKay, that people miss that in their branding. Like, for instance, I know you, John McKay, you're a radio show host, but you're a softball dad, right? Right?
Yep.
Like, and that's big, right? Like that's important. And so I think, what he said in marketing and in real estate, and when we focus on that, and for me, I think it's the opposite, McKay, and that's what the differentiator is. And you got to find the differentiator. Like for me, I'm a real estate agent and a radio host. So I start on the other side of the spectrum and then add that in where you start on that side and then go to the other. And so I think regardless of the business you're in, you have to look at what your and is in relation to your competition and then how that's differentiating you. So it might not just be a house. It might be a house and a shop, that you could run your business out of. Or, it might not just be a house or a home, but it might be and an ADU where you can have multi-generations living there. And so I think for him, it was just a good concept to see, regardless of who's listening out there, and this is a real estate show, I get it, but whatever business you're in, what is the and portion that is differentiating you in whatever medium that you're working in. So that was hugely, hugely important. A big takeaway from us. I was very, very fortunate to spend some time with people that led real estate brands last week all across the country. We're not just talking like Kenmore team. So for instance, we got to spend time with the CEO of EXP. So EXP is a company in our market. You see their signs around. So the new CEO, Leo Pareja, was there, and we got to talk with him about what EXP is doing. 100,000 agents across the U.S. Former CEO of Keller Williams, another brand in town, Chris Heller, was there, and we got to spend time talking with Chris at lunch and sit down with him and talk to him about what he's doing. And then Real Brokerage is another brand you're starting to see here in the Northwest a little bit more. And Sharon Shavatsa is probably one of the most brilliant minds in real estate I've been around in the last couple of years. And so it was fun to just see people that were leading hundreds of thousands of agents, what they're looking at and what's coming down the pipeline for real estate in the nation. And so there's been a lot of changes. And so, some people were worried about that. Washington State has been a real leader in that. There was actually numerous times Washington was mentioned as kind of a poster child for how things should be done. So that was really fun to be in a state that was doing that. Before the break, we were wrapping up, though, because I was talking about some of the tidbits that we got from Ryan Serhart from $1 Million Listing. And I got to tell you, so the last question that I asked him I thought was really funny, and he's so down to earth and so pragmatic. I said, what was the hardest part about expanding your brokerages? Because we got licensed in Oregon last year and we've done this on a much smaller scale. And I said, well, what's the hardest part about expanding your brokerages up and down the East Coast? And he said contracts. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, real estate contracts. He goes, you all are crazy in these other markets. And I said, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I sold real estate in New York, he said, for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And he goes, we operate much like commercial brokers with like a letter of intent is what it's called. People around here might know what a letter of intent is. It's basically a summary of what you're trying to do in a deal, but it's not binding. So he's like, I sold real estate for New York in 10 years, for 10 years. And he goes, we did deal sheets, which are basically like letter of intent. So you'd put a summary together. You would basically in New York just be like, my buyer, Joe Smith wants to buy the townhouse, that address, and he wants to pay, $3.2 million. And then he goes, we would send that over and we would come to terms on the deal sheet, and then each party would send it off to attorneys. And then he said the next 30 days, their life was just following up with attorneys to get the contracts. Oh. And then the attorneys would finalize the contracts. So here this guy becomes famous on TV, and he's a huge realtor, sells $1 billion. And he starts to expand his team, across the East Coast, and he thinks everybody operates like he does. And then he starts to realize different states, and they have statewide forms and different contracts. And he was like blown away.
Wow.
So it was an answer I did not expect, and I've read a couple of his books and hadn't seen that in there, but, really fun to just talk to somebody at a normal, dinner, lunch conversation and find out that, yeah, figuring out all those different states' contracts does start to present some issues for sure. Well, I'll totally run out of time today, so I want to get my pick 3 in real quick because here locally we do have some great new inventory that's come on the market. So I've got pick number 1 here. I've got a home at 1646 West 52nd in Kennewick. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, large home, 3,578 square feet, up in Inspiration Estates there in Kennewick. Mm-hmm. Custom built-ins, wood flooring throughout, Rambler with a daylight basement. Absolutely gorgeous big kitchen. Stylish center island, stainless steel appliances, awesome granite countertops. You'll love the private primary suite. Has a walk-in closet, dual sink vanity, great big soaking tub, and a huge tiled walk-in shower. Mm-hmm. And then breathtaking views. Up there in Inspiration Estates, you get just territorial Kennewick views. It's absolutely gorgeous. Pick number 2, I'm going to take you out the opposite way to Benton City. This is 57922 West 360 out in Benton City. This is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,566 square feet. Awesome country setting on 6.5 irrigated acres. Mm-hmm. And that's irrigated. It's absolutely gorgeous out there. New LVP flooring throughout the main area of the house. Freshly carpeted bedrooms. You'll love the large kitchen, epoxy counters, stainless steel appliances. Split bedroom design, private primary suite. And outside is just an absolute canvas for your ideas. Lots of outbuildings, chicken coop, pasture, just waiting for animals, mature landscaping, and shade trees. It's a gorgeous property for that. And that price point is coming in at $449,000.
Ooh.
And then if you need a complete blank canvas to build a custom home on, 27509 South 932 PRSE. So that's out in Badger Canyon. So there's some massive estate quality type custom homes out there in Badger Canyon. Mm-hmm. This is on almost a 7-acre lot. Perfect place to build a dream home. Lots of space, endless possibilities for customization. You could have a shop out there, a pool. I mean, it's endless possibilities with that much acreage out there. A great, great spot to find. You don't often find, there's not too many parcels in Badger Canyon left that are roughly that size of 7 acres, so very sought after. So if you haven't found that custom home build lot, you want the accessibility and the convenience of Badger Canyon because it's really easy to get into Kennewick and close to shopping, food, restaurants, everything. Great, great spot to take a look at for that. So, John, I was telling you that we were talking a little bit too. Like, I had to pinch myself a little bit to say, I'm in a room. I run a team of 35, agents. And I'm in there with the CEO of EXP, and he runs, has 100,000 agents. And then we get the Keller Williams CEO in there. And it was interesting because all three of them had a very, very similar message. And so they were talking about the market changing and what was happening. And the biggest thing that they said was that as these changes come to market, and people keep talking about this, the real estate market and the agents that are in the market have to find ways to add more value. So I think part of what they're talking about is as these changes come up in the past, you would just show up at an open house, or you would call an agent off a sign and say, show me this house.
Yeah.
And I think there was a time in our industry where that type of agent just became a door opener. By that I just mean like they would just, the client would say they want to see it. That's it. They would show up and open the door, and there was no relationship with that client. And I think a lot of times in that case, when you look at someone just being a door opener, they're not adding a lot of value in that situation. Because if that was the case, there was a technology model that just said we could put a camera up at the house, and we could put a lockbox on the house that is an electronic lockbox with a code. And if that was the case, why do we even need an agent? If they're just going to be a door opener, then let's just give the client an electronic code, and we don't even bother driving over there. And they can just walk through them. McKay, you're laughing, right? But so that's the same amount of value that I think in many cases was being provided. And these changes now, when you sit down and say, well, hey, we have a contract we have to sign now. It's agency law. Yeah. There's going to be terms there. And I think the client is looking at him and saying, well, what am I going to get for those terms? Yeah. What value are you going to provide? And so as agents, all of these leaders of agents across the U.S. were saying, like, you have to show that value to the client. And I think it's important for the client to ask about that value as well. And so I was also fortunate, another media conglomerate, iHeartRadio, many people have heard about. So the CEO of that company was there as well. And it was interesting. It didn't matter if we were talking about this radio show or the radio industry or real estate. They all said that once you thought that you've provided enough value, you have to look at that and provide even more value. And so that was another huge takeaway from all of these people. And then the very last one, which happens in real estate a lot, that I wanted to bring up, that was a big message, is that all of these folks that have had, massive success in their career and their business and have gotten to this point and then, been able to lead other people and then give ideas to the room, they've all came away with a common theme. And almost all of them said that you have to control the controllables in your business. And then the big point that they said is people are not controllables. So if you think you're going to control all the people, specifically, that's probably going to cause you, a big issue. But so what does that mean? So if people aren't controllables in your business, but you're in a people business, a lot of people like to say that, you have to look at what you can do. Well, you can control the time that you put in to the activities that you're doing. You can control the phone calls that you make. You can control the properties that you go preview for your clients. And you can control the amount of information that you know in the market about the properties. But you can't make the decision for them. You can't say this is the one you're buying or this is what you're going to write in. A lot of people get caught up in that, I think, in our industry and in our business. And it comes down to where you have to go back and look at, can I just control the controllables? Yeah. And if I focus on that, I'll have enough opportunities that the rest of it will take care of itself in those situations. Because I won't be able to. I might do everything right once and someone decides to buy a house or a house sells. And then I might do everything the exact same way the second or third time. But we have uncontrollables in there. We have the people factor in there, and it might not work the same way. So I would just say look at your business and what you can control regardless of the industry. That's what was so great about these speakers is they're smart no matter where they're at or what they do. And many of them run 3, 4, 5 different businesses. And the big takeaway of that was control the controllables, control the condition of your home that you're going to be selling, control the follow-up, control how the yard looks, look at those controllables and you're going to be able to do that. Because I take a lot of calls during the day from people that sometimes will say, somebody will come by and they'll say, how did the showing go? And it was like, well, it didn't go great. The buyer doesn't like your neighbor. And they'll be like, well, what do you mean the buyer doesn't like my neighbor? How did they talk to each other? Well, they saw him out in the driveway and he doesn't like him. And so, they're mad at me and I'm like, I cannot control your neighbor and his political views and that he was wearing the wrong hat that day. Yeah. And so sometimes we have to go back and look at say, hey, look, you had the house prepared well. It looked nice. We're doing the right things. We continue down that path of controllables. We're going to have success. And so I just think, I relate it back to that's a checklist, right? Yeah. A checklist of controllable. If it's worth doing, then it's worth having a checklist. You look at pilots; they have pre-flight checklists. They have run-ups that they do specifically at the end of the runway, and then when they're done, they have post-flight and they have shutdown checklists. When you go to the doctor, it's not an accident that the nurse comes in and opens up the laptop and she has 20 questions. She has a system that she follows. If it's worth doing, it's worth having a system. If you have questions that you're not working in a real estate relationship that has a system with checklists, please go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot us a message. We'd be glad to show you what our checklists look like and what we think is important when we're asking questions and helping people in the real estate journey. So I had a great week. I'm super fired up. My team and I are committed to helping more people than we have ever helped moving forward in the next, second half of the year as we move during second quarter. And before you know it, we'll be right into the second half of the year. So any questions or if anybody wants to know any additional takeaways I had from this conference, go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot us a message, and we'll be glad to help. And also, we'll be right back here next week.
Right here on News Talk 870.